Okie dokie. All right, so again, thank y'all so much for coming to the Dominate Your Audit virtual class. And my name is Sonia Jones with GIP Financials. I am the owner, chief visionary CEO, whatever you want to call it, of GIP Financials. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what the audit is, what it is not, and some best practices if you are a nonprofit leader or a charter school leader, because in most states, I know in the state of Tennessee, charter schools have to be registered nonprofits. So I wanted to make sure that we tackled something that we are definitely going to be going into for the upcoming fiscal year. If your fiscal year starts July 1st, you are officially in the what we call the fiscal year 2024 year. So that starts July the 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. All right. So about GIP Financials, our mission is to empower CEOs to prioritize their numbers and position their businesses for profit. We do that through bookkeeping and also through fundamental business finance education. We are a teaching ministry. That's who we are. And GIP is an acronym for Get in Position. So our client base are basically CEOs, the people who create the organizations and are the chief decision makers of the organizations, because our function acts as a partner to the CEO. And of course, we have CEOs in for-profits as well as nonprofit organizations. So we make sure that we offer services for both types of entities. So of course, we have a team, and I effectively call my team the positionettes. We have 5 staff accountants, and we also have a client concierge. So just to give you some context on how our workflow is, for our monthly bookkeeping clients, each monthly bookkeeping client is assigned a staff accountant, and the staff accountant's primary responsibility is to categorize transactions. We use QuickBooks and endorse QuickBooks, and also offer any additional services like accounts receivable assistance, accounts payable assistance, financial reporting, and the like. We also have a client concierge, and Stephanie McCain's main responsibility is to check in with our clients and make sure that they are okay, to offer an ear and a shoulder, if you will, because even if the needs are non-financial, maybe they need a resource for outsourcing some type of task, we should have resources or connections that can help them, point them in the right direction. So that's Steph's function as well. So a little bit about me. I am an educator by trade, 22 years in education. I was a certified music teacher for 12 years. I am still certified instrumental music K through 12 in the state of Tennessee, at least until 2026. But I've also, for the past 10 years, was the founding director of finance and operations for Vision Prep Charter School. But I'm now, I've stepped down from that position. I've resigned, and so I'm full-time with GIP Financials. And so in the midst of those 10 years, I have gained lots of knowledge around operations, HR, payroll, you name it, logistics, all of that stuff. So with that came some certifications, right? Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. So with that, I am a certified county finance officer. I chose this certification because all of our charter schools in the state of Tennessee are governed under, not all of them, I'll say the single site operated charter schools are under Memphis-Shelby County Schools. So you have to have an understanding of local government accounting. And also with Georgetown University, I have a certification in education finance as well. And that certification came about right at the beginning of the pandemic, because there were some definite tools that we needed in our toolbox to make sure that we were able to serve our schools and our stakeholders effectively. And of course, like I mentioned before, we are a certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor team. Most of our staff accountants are certified as QuickBooks accountants as well. So yeah, we got the skills to pay the bills. So welcome those of you guys who have recently came on to the webinar, and I want to shout out our position at Latasha Long, now Latasha Phillips, newlywed. So y'all make sure you congratulate her in the chat. So today we're talking about the audit. So when it comes to the audit, what are you afraid of? So you see, you got dude in suit, he's the CEO, and the audit is the boogeyman, the shadow behind him, right? So when it comes to the audit, put in the chat, what are you afraid of? If you've never heard of the word audit, and you're just like, dude, every time I might not have participated in an audit, but the word audit just gives me the heebie-jeebies, right? There's some things you're thinking about. As a for-profit business, the word audit may mean something a little different, because from a for-profit standpoint, the audit is like you going to the principal's office, right? You did something, got in trouble. But from a nonprofit's perspective, the word audit is a softer term. It's really more a term of accountability, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So today, what we're going to learn, I told you I was a teacher where I was going to have objectives. So by the end of this workshop, you will be able to understand the basics of an audit and also identify and implement best practices to prepare for your audit. All right. So first things first, what is an audit? And remember, from this point forward, we're going to be talking about audits in the realm of nonprofit organizations. Okay. So in a nonprofit audit is basically an examination of the organization's financial statements, your records, transactions, your practices, and your internal controls, right? So it's basically, are you doing what you said your organization would be doing? And this reference is from the Jitasa Group. And the Jitasa Group is one of the outsourced bookkeeping organizations, but they have really good fundamental knowledge about nonprofit finance. So I rocks with Jitasa. All right, so the types of audits for this workshop, I think the biggest thing to really differentiate is the external financial audit and the internal financial audit. So most of us, especially if you're a charter school leader or a nonprofit organization, the external financial audit is going to be the one that if you haven't, especially from a revenue standpoint, if you're not there now, you will be later on. And so the external financial audit is the audit that's conducted by a CPA firm. All right. If your organization doesn't require an external financial audit, and like I said, it really depends on revenue and state guidelines, then you have an internal financial audit, and that's conducted by the organization's finance team or the governing board. And most governing board of directors have committees, and in most situations, the finance committee would spearhead the internal financial audit. And so just to give you an example, last year, there was a CDC that we partnered with that needed an internal financial audit, which they requested simply because they had an exchange of leadership. And they just wanted to make sure that the practices that were set by the former executive director, they wanted to make sure that those things were on the straight and narrow. So they just needed an objective set of eyes to review that process. And so they hired GIP for that. So that's just an example of an internal financial audit. So when are audits required? External audits are required if your organization's bylaws require it. So if you are the nonprofit organization's CEO, executive director, or if you are the CFO or a member of the governing board, you should have a copy of the organization's bylaws and read those bylaws. There are a lot of nonprofits that have bylaws, they create them and they don't change them and review them annually. Those need to be reviewed at least once a year by your board of directors, just to make sure if anything needs to be updated, right? For growth's sake. Next thing, if your state requires it based on the annual revenue that your organization receives, right? So nonprofit organizations are created by the state, but the tax exempt status is authorized by the federal government. All right, so I want to make sure that I mention that as well. So check in the state of Tennessee. Make sure that you check with the Department of Revenue for the nonprofit expectations, and also check with the state comptroller. That is basically the CFO of the state of Tennessee. So check with them to make sure about the expectations, because like I said, like I mentioned earlier, I'm looking at it from a charter school standpoint. The charter schools in the state of Tennessee have to be nonprofits, right? And because we receive state and federal funding, it's automatic. You have to have an audit, right? Non-negotiable. So next thing, if the nonprofit receives over $750,000 in federal revenue, that is automatic. You got to have an external audit. And also if the nonprofit receives a grant that requires it. So if you have like a big old grant, like a McKinsey Scott grant or something like that, that's like definitely going to be over 750,000, maybe like Hyde Foundation, Walton Foundation, things like that. Those foundations, I'm pretty sure, are going to require an external audit, because you got to think about it. And I talked about this in the grant loans workshop. Grants are not free. People assume that they're free, but when I say they're not free, there is a level of accountability that has to come from their organization, because those funders, when they give their money to you for whatever said purpose, whatever you said that you were going to do with those funds in that grant application, they want to make sure that you did it. One, that you spent that money on what you said you're going to spend it on, and two, that you maintain proper accounting principles as well. So some of those grants will require an audit. So another thing that a lot of people get confused is the audit versus the 990. And especially depending on how large your nonprofit is revenue-wise, this is not an either or, it's a both and. Okay, so again, the audit is basically looking over your organization's financial processes. But the 990 is, for lack of a better term, the tax return, right? That has to be submitted to the IRS. And the 990 is going to outline your revenue, your expenses, an update of your governing board, and also the compensation of executive leadership. Last time I checked, it was any position over $100,000 has to be reported in the 990. And so just a little tea, I'm gonna give you this for free. If you're applying for a position and you want to see, especially like if it's an executive leadership position, I always check the 990, because it's going to let you know what those salaries are, and it'll give you kind of a gauge on what they've been, paying people and stuff like that. So just a little tea for that. And you can search that. 990s are public information as well. So just to give you an example of the different types of 990s that are available and how you have to file them. And like I said, it's really based on revenue. So again, if you look at the status here, you'll know which form that you have to file. Now, let me also say this as well. There may be a situation where, like say, for example, your organization hasn't, maybe your gross receipts are less than 200K, you could easily do the 990 easy. However, you do have the option of completing what they call the full form 990 if you're looking to apply for grants and stuff like that. Because remember, I told you before, some of those grantors, when you're applying, are going to request financial audit or a full 990, or maybe some financial statements that are officially signed by CPA. So you just have to kind of pick the one that's going to best fit your organization and represent your organization in the best way, right? So just want to show y'all that. All right. So when it comes to the audit best practices, make sure that you are taking some notes, because we're going to talk a little bit about the audit timeline. And within the audit timeline, I'm going to give you a little bit of game on what to expect. Okay. So first things first, you always want to check the state comptroller for fiscal year 23 audit deadline. So I'm speaking in the context of you are a nonprofit organization. There is a high probability that you will be completing an audit for this prior fiscal year. And so just to make sure that I'm speaking clearly, the fiscal year 23 that I'm referring to are your financials from July the 1st, 2022 to June the 30th, 2023. Check with your state comptroller for your audit deadlines. Okay. Second thing, you need to know how to prepare for said audit. So, although today is what, the 12th? So effective June 30th, your fiscal year 24 budget should have already been submitted and approved by your governing board. In the spring of 2023, your auditors should have sent to you an audit contract. And this is if you've already done an external audit in prior years. If you're a newbie and you have not done this yet, no worries. If you're still in the process of trying to plan that out, then this may not apply, but just to let you know that there is an engagement contract that's involved when you're doing an external audit with an auditing firm or CPA firm. Hear me clearly. The audit contract and the 990 contract are separate engagements. I highly recommend that whoever is doing your audit also does your 990, because it makes no sense to have somebody doing your audit. They have all that information for your 990, just make sure that they both do it. You can definitely do that. You don't have to have a separate entity to do those separate tasks. The auditing firm can file the 990 for you on your organization's behalf. Okay. And then if, like say if you're a charter school, those fees should have already been included in your fiscal 24 budget and approved already. Okay. Next thing, once the contracts are signed and you're ready to roll, July 2023, this month, you're going to close out your fiscal year 23 financials. I know for us, we tried to make sure that our financials were closed by the 15th. So you still got some wiggle room there. And as you're doing that, your auditor should be preparing to send you the audit document checklist for the fiscal year 23 audit. If you are already familiar with the audit, I would say just go ahead and use last year's checklist because they don't change. They don't change. So use that as a best practice to start going ahead and gathering your documentation. Okay. And then here are the next two things. If you're not familiar with these two documents, you need to make sure that you're familiar with these ASAP. So in addition to your organization's bylaws, you need to have access to your organization's financial policy and your organization's internal control narrative. These two documents right here are going to be the foundation for your audit, because your auditors are going to ask for these two documents to see if anything has changed from the prior year. And they're going to use these documents to prove that you said that you are doing said practices within these two documents. So with the financial policy, it basically outlines all of the fiscal authorizations, who has the authority to do what. So if your organization has a checking account, who signs the checks? If your organization has to, like, say, for example, you're a charter school, you have to get the utilities turned on. Who's going to sign for that? Who authorizes that? If there's anything going on like a loan and there's a personal guarantee that's required, who's going to take that on? Those things should be outlined in the financial policy. If a service is needed and an RFP is required, a request for proposal, how much does the service need to be annually before an RFP needs to be created and submitted for bid? Those types of things, the timeline for the RFP, all those things should be included in the financial policy. It's basically talking about authorizations and thresholds. The internal control narrative is basically outlining every financial function that goes on in that building, who does what, and you list them by title, not by name. List them by title, job title. The responsibilities of said title and the processes. This is basically the standard operating procedure of your fiscal, the fiscal portion of your team, of your organization. Okay, so again, the financial policy outlines all of the authorizations and the thresholds for services rendered, things like that. Internal controls basically record the standard operating procedures. Okay, and like I said, the auditors are going to ask for these two documents and basically say, okay, you said if an RFP has to be submitted or requested if you're asking for services over $25,000. They're going to request your, what they call the general ledger or the trial balance for your organization. The general ledger is going to show all of the income and expenses accounts. They're going to review every service or every expense from July 22 to June 23. If it's over $25,000, they're going to flag it and say, I need the RFP for this service to see if you did what you said you were going to do in that financial policy. Internal control, payroll. They're going to ask for your payroll journal, because whatever you put in that internal control about who runs payroll, things of that magnitude, they're going to ask for that. Another big one is how you handle cash, who writes receipts, things like that. That was a big one for us. So we had to be explicitly clear on who would have a receipt book in that building, what they would be receipting in that building, because they're going to ask for your cash journals or your receipt book, stuff like that, those types of things. Next, as you're prepping for your audit in August, that's primarily when the audit engagement will begin. For the charter schools in Tennessee, if we're governed under Memphis Shelby County Schools, those audits have to be done and submit it to the Tennessee State Comptroller by December 31st. So you got 6 months from the end of the fiscal year, the prior fiscal year, to get your audit done. So right now it's go time. So the audit engagement began. Just because, and I'll just keep saying it, as far as we're a charter, because the charter schools have different deadlines. Your nonprofit may not have to go through that same deadline, but it's a common practice, right? So I just want to make sure that I make myself clear there. When the audit engagement begins, 2 things have to make sure, or have to be clarified. You're going to have some type of document upload portal. Your auditors are going to provide that for you to upload said documents. And then they're going to want to probably be in your building just to sit there, not to spy, but it's just easier to request certain documents while you're on the premises. Okay. So that type of thing. September to November, the audit is still being conducted and they're reviewing things. They're asking you questions, all that good stuff. I'm gonna give you some sound advice that my mentor gave me, Tanya Lewis of Ops 360. You give the auditors exactly what they ask for. Nothing more, nothing less. You let them ask you the follow-up questions, okay? I cannot stress that, because what you're gonna end up doing is adding more work to your already busy schedule. So please do not do that. Give the auditors exactly what they ask for, okay? And again, the quicker you prepare and give them what they ask for, the quicker your audit will be. So it's always good. You actually prepare by having sound fiscal processes and controls throughout the year, right? So for us at Vision Prep, we had myself, the DFO, we had a controller, and then we had a record specialist. So the record specialist, her primary job is to make sure that every piece of financial documentation in that place is properly organized, labeled, and categorized. Because when the auditor comes, all she has to do is just present that glorious stack of information, and they have already fallen in love with us. And our financial record specialist is the bomb. And she is such the bomb that before she goes on her summer vacation, she's already thinking in her mind, when I come back, she's already doing prep work in May to ensure that when she comes back after vacation, she already got half her stuff already done for the audit. That's who you need on your team, okay? So be thinking about who in your organization is going to be the financial document person, because they have to have every T crossed and every I dotted. That function is critical to the audit, okay? And then December, there should be the audit draft, which is available for the board by that time. Because normally what happens, I say right before Thanksgiving, I know for us in the charter school environment, the audit draft, and there's what they call the management letter that has to be reviewed by a member of the executive leadership. 9 times out of 10, that would be the CFO or whoever the chief financial person is, just to make sure that the management's explanation of processes and things are correct. And also my responsibility was to make sure, with the help of our accountant, was to make sure that those numbers were accurate in that audit draft. And then you present it to the board. In most cases, the finance committee, you probably won't need to submit it to the entire board during a financial meeting, but probably just the financial committee members. And so after the audit is conducted, you get the final official draft. The final official audit, final audit. You're going to have audit opinions, okay? So this will be presented to the board during the board meeting, because it'll be up to whoever the chief financial person of your organization might be the executive director, to address any findings. And if there are any findings, it'll be your responsibility to go ahead and start talking about how you're going to correct those things going forward. So just so you're aware of the type of audit opinions, you have the unqualified opinion. So that means you got a clean audit. So everything that you said in your financial policy and your internal controls, it was represented in your practices, because they're going to ask you for data just to check to make sure that they call it testing. So to make sure all your tests come back clean. Qualified opinion, most of it was good, but you just had a couple of things that you just had to work out. The adverse opinion was like, all right, now somebody not doing what they said they were supposed to do, right? But then you have also a disclaimer of opinion, because this is basically like your child, right? Whatever's going on between the fiscal policies and the internal controls and what you guys are doing is so convoluted, they can't even do anything with it. That's not what you want, okay? That's not what you want. So we're always going for the unqualified opinion. And like I said, qualified opinion is not bad. There's just a couple things that you need to fix, okay? And especially if you're going through any type of major transition, like leadership transition, just expect a qualified opinion. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody's going to get in big trouble because of that. So as you're going through and thinking about all the stuff that I just talked about, I know it's a lot. You're going to get the recording. But be thinking about one strategy that you can implement for your organization. So say if you're a nonprofit and you might not be ready for an external audit just yet, but it's good to look at the IRS. Go look at your state comptroller's website, look at your State Department of Revenue to kind of see, based off of the expected revenue that you're looking to receive for fiscal year 24, be preparing for that now. Be asking other, like your nonprofit colleagues, have y'all gone through an audit? Who are y'all using for your auditors? Those types of things. It's always good to prep and get ready. I see something in the chat. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. So be thinking about how you can prepare, strategize, and execute. Like I said, I know it's a lot. Just be thinking about one thing that you can do to push your organization forward. So with that being said, if you feel like you need help planning your audit, or even thinking about doing an internal audit, right? GIP Financials can definitely help you in that regard. So I'm going to basically be talking from, if you're just a nonprofit that's not school affiliated, right? We offer a variety of services, from self-serve, like online courses like we're doing right now, done with you. Like we offer coaching. Maybe you're a nonprofit that hasn't committed to financial software yet. You may need QuickBooks set up. Done for you services. Maybe you need a hands-off approach and need expert level assistance with your monthly bookkeeping. We provide that. Or if you need higher level CFO level type of services for like budget planning, or even like the internal audit, that would be that one-on-one level type of service. But for our charter school organizations, charter school leaders, we are rolling out in the fall of 2023. It's called the School Ops Toolbox. And I'm so excited about this because we want to make sure that our school operations and finance leaders have a mother hen, myself, that's going to love on them and offer guidance and teach them the fundamentals to be able to push their organizations forward and make sure that they're fiscally and operationally sound. So that's what we're providing with the School Ops Toolbox. So some of the things that we're going to cover within the School Ops Toolbox are budgeting and forecasting, financial reporting analysis, grant management, financial controls, ops management, training and onboarding. If you're a school finance or operations person, in a lot of situations, especially if it's a startup charter school, that one person is doing operations, finance, and HR, the trifecta, and it can get overwhelming. So just having some professional development and somebody to kind of guide you through that process is going to be critical. Process improvement. If you already have a nonprofit or a charter school and you've got your internal controls and your financial policy and bylaws, you want an objective set of eyes to look at it. That's what we're here to do, as well as strategy, execution, and vendor management. When we talked about those RFPs and stuff like that, that's what that will fall under. So we are here to provide high-level assistance. The School Ops Toolbox is ideal for, say, if you are an organization and you're starting in this position and you need some coaching, that's primarily the ideal situation to be in. Or say if you've been in this spot for a while and you know that your school is growing and you need some added guidance, maybe it's time for you to start delegating some responsibilities. This will be an ideal situation for you as well. Okay. So again, the School Ops Toolbox, and we are excited about that. So I want to take some time here. If you guys have any questions about anything that was discussed today, I would love your feedback. Feel free to unmute or add something in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling. When it comes to fiscal stuff, I know it can be overwhelming. It's a lot. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. It's gonna be a lot, but just being able to break things down and just offer some hand-holding and some education is always good. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you. Thank you, Shamika. I really appreciate that. And like I said, especially for those of you who are nonprofits, you're looking to apply for grants, this is going to be paramount just to make sure which type of audit is going to be ideal for your organization. Check with those grantors in the application process to see what they require before you start, investing in money and things like that, to make sure that what you're seeking is a good fit, right? So if you're interested in the School Ops Toolbox or even an internal audit of your organization's fiscal practices, feel free to email me at info@gipfinancials.com, and we can schedule a discovery call to kind of get in the nitty-gritty of what you guys need. And again, I greatly appreciate you guys giving me an hour of your time, or 38 minutes of your time to discuss sound fiscal practices for your organization. Are there any other questions? Anything? All right, shout out Dr. Gates. I see you in the building. Praise the CDC. Shamika Gibson of Dress for Success. I greatly appreciate that. Frank, I introduced Frank in the chat. I had to change the chat settings because I did not do that prior to. So if not, if y'all don't have anything, again, I greatly appreciate you guys. The recording will be sent to you within the next 24 hours. And I appreciate you guys. Share GIP Financials with everybody that you know that needs some financial assistance. We're going to be rolling out some other programs and stuff as well. So just keep an eye out for us. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got a lot of free education content that will help you out a whole bunch. Thank you guys. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.
Bye, Sonia. Great workshop.
Thank you. Thank you, Shamika. I appreciate that.
All right. See you at the next one.
Yes, ma'am.